In a bustling bank in Seoul, South Korea, a young woman named Minji Kim, who has Down syndrome, walked in with pride, ready to open her first savings account. This moment was the culmination of months of hard work and determination. However, instead of receiving the support she deserved, Minji faced public humiliation at the hands of insensitive bank employees. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, an unexpected voice echoed through the hall. To everyone's astonishment, it was none other than Taehyung from BTS. What happened next left everyone speechless. Before we dive deeper into this inspiring story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we have another special story waiting for you. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Minji Kim's small apartment, illuminating the cozy space filled with personal touches. Family photos adorned the walls, and colorful sticky notes with reminders were carefully placed around the room. That morning, Minji was especially excited. After months of saving part of her salary as a server at a local cafe, she had finally gathered enough money to open her first savings account. It was a significant milestone for her, proof that she could take care of herself even when the world insisted on underestimating her. She grabbed her notebook, where she had written down every step to open the account, checking each detail one last time. The pages were filled with scribbles and reminders, illustrating her dedication to learning and doing everything correctly. Today is the day, Minji. You can do this, she told herself in the mirror, repeating the phrase like a mantra of courage. When she arrived at the bank, the scene was chaotic. Lines stretched to the door, people were complaining about the wait, and the staff seemed stressed, trying to keep up with the day's demands. Minji took a deep breath and walked in, clutching her folder of documents tightly. She felt the curious gazes of some customers and employees but kept her focus on her goal. She joined the line and, as she waited, quietly rehearsed what she would say to the teller. She mentally reviewed her notes, making sure she wouldn't forget any details. When her turn came, she was greeted by Jiyeon Park, a staff member with a tired and impatient expression. Jiyeon barely looked up at Minji before asking in a disinterested tone, "What do you need?" "I'd like to open a savings account, please," Minji said with a shy but hopeful smile. Jiyeon took Minji's documents and began reviewing them quickly, but her expression shifted to one of boredom and impatience. "You filled this out wrong here and here. We can't accept it like this." Jiyeon pushed the papers back toward Minji. "You need to come back with someone who knows how to do this." Minji blinked, confused. She was certain she had followed all the instructions correctly. She tried to explain, "But I checked everything. It's correct. I followed the guide exactly." "Look, sweetheart," Jiyeon interrupted, using a condescending tone. "There's no point in insisting. This is wrong. Come back with a guardian or someone who can help you." Minji felt her hands tremble slightly. Jiyeon's tone, so cold and insensitive, began to chip away at her confidence. Even so, she tried again. "I'm my own guardian. I can prove." Before she could finish, Jiyeon rolled her eyes and, exasperated, announced loudly enough for everyone in the bank to hear, "You're wasting my time. Let someone else handle this. Okay?" Silence fell over the room. All eyes turned to Minji, who, embarrassed and humiliated, lowered her head, her face flushed, tears threatening to escape. The weight of that moment felt overwhelming. Still holding her documents, Minji noticed the people around her whispering and looking at her with either pity or disdain. The humiliation was unbearable, but amidst the tension, something unexpected was about to happen. Minji remained standing, trying to summon the strength to withstand the humiliation she was feeling. The murmurs of those around her were like a weight pressing down on her chest. Clutching her documents tightly, she tried to remind herself why she was there. Her independence, her accomplishment. But at that moment, it all felt distant. "Please wait over there," Jiyeon said, pointing to a nearby chair, her tone still cold and impatient. Minji walked to the seat, feeling the weight of the stairs around her. Sitting down, she began to organize her papers again, going through everything to figure out what she might have done wrong. "I did everything right. I did everything right," she repeated to herself. A few minutes later, a bank manager, Sungmin Lee, appeared. He walked toward Minji with a smile that at first seemed friendly but soon revealed a patronizing undertone. Hello, Miss Kim. I'm Sungmin, the manager. I was informed about your situation. Why don't we have a quick chat? He said, inviting her to follow him to a table in a quieter corner. Minji took a deep breath and followed him. Sitting across from Sungmin, she began explaining again why she was there, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. He listened with apparent patience, but as she spoke, his smile shifted to something more condescending. I see, he interrupted mid-sentence. But I have to ask, are you sure you're ready to manage a bank account on your own? Something like this can be complicated. The question hit Minji like a blow. She swallowed hard but replied firmly, Yes, I know how to take care of my money. I worked hard to get here. Sungmin leaned back in his chair, clasping his hands together on the table. Look, I'm not saying you're incapable, but our protocols require certain formalities. For example, your documents don't have a signature from a legal guardian. That could be an issue. Minji furrowed her brow, confused. I am my own guardian. I can sign. Sungmin let out a short, uncomfortable laugh, as if trying to soften the situation. Well, technically, yes, but we need to make sure everything is appropriate. Why don't you come back another day with someone who can verify this for you? Minji felt indignation rising within her. She knew she was being treated unfairly, but before she could respond, she heard murmurs from nearby customers. Some were silently defending her, while others made discriminatory comments. She probably doesn't even know what she's doing here, muttered a man in line. Why do they let people like that try to handle complicated things? Another replied. Minji tried to block out the comments, but their words echoed in her mind, cutting deep. Still, she persisted. My documents are correct. I read everything before I came. I want to open my account today. Sungmin sighed, visibly exasperated. Wait here. I'll check on something. He stood and walked over to Jiyeon at the counter. From her seat, Minji could hear bits of their conversation. Sungmin was speaking in a low voice, but his attitude was clear. He shook his head, saying things like, We can't waste time on this. It's obvious she can't handle something like this on her own. Minji felt tears welling up in her eyes but refused to let them fall. She didn't want to show weakness, even as everything around her seemed to crumble. Suddenly, she heard the sound of a click. Turning, she saw a nearby customer taking a photo of her with their phone. This is just so sad, the person commented to someone else. Minji lowered her head, ashamed. She didn't realize her situation was becoming a spectacle for others. She felt alone, exposed, and trapped. As Minji tried to compose herself, the image of her sitting there, visibly shaken, began circulating on social media. The impact of that moment was about to take on a dimension no one in the bank could have predicted. Amidst the chaos of the bank, seated quietly in a discreet corner, was a man trying to remain unnoticed. That man was Taehyung from BTS, disguised as he often did during his rare public outings. Taehyung had come to the bank for personal matters, but now his attention was fully focused on Minji. He had been watching the situation unfold from the beginning. Jiyeon's cold tone, Sungmin's condescending behavior, and the humiliation Minji endured. Every word and gesture had been carefully observed, and Taehyung now seemed to be weighing his options, deciding when and how to act. Meanwhile, Minji remained seated, reorganizing her papers for the 100th time. She was trying to hold on to her dignity, even though her red, tear-filled eyes betrayed the toll the moment had taken on her. Taehyung watched her with a serious, almost somber expression, clearly unsettled by what he had witnessed. People like her are always underestimated, aren't they? An elderly man nearby commented, noticing Taehyung's focus on Minji. It's painful to watch this happen. Taehyung gave a small nod but said nothing. His gaze remained fixed on Minji and the bank staff. He knew that when he intervened, it would have to be at just the right moment. Across the room, Sungmin and Jiyeon were still talking. Taehyung could hear snippets of their conversation. Unproductive, time-consuming, Not worth the effort. Each word added to the frustration building inside him. He adjusted his cap and took a deep breath, visibly trying to stay composed. Minji, on the other hand, mustered her courage and approached Sungmin again, clutching her papers tightly. She tried once more to make her case. I've done everything I was asked to. Please, I just want to open my account. Without even looking up from the documents on his desk, Sungmin replied coldly, I've already explained. Without a legal guardian, we can't do anything. You'll need to come back another day. But I am my own guardian, Minji insisted, her voice trembling. Sungmin raised his hand to cut her off. Miss Kim, I've told you already. Come back another day with a legal guardian. Do I need to spell it out for you? Minji stood frozen for a moment before turning to walk toward the bank's exit. Each step felt heavier than the last. The murmurs of those around her continued, some casting pitying looks, others showing disdain. Taehyung stood up suddenly, his voice cutting through the murmurs with calm authority. This has gone far enough. He began walking toward the counter, his steps deliberate yet filled with an unmistakable determination. As he approached the desk where Ji-yeon was about to dismiss Minji once again, he stopped her movement with a quiet but commanding voice. Can you explain why you're treating this customer like this? Ji-yeon turned, startled by the interruption. Her irritated expression quickly gave way to confusion. She didn't recognize Taehyung immediately because of his disguise. Sir, this is none of your concern, Ji-yeon replied, attempting to maintain her professional demeanor. Taehyung removed his sunglasses, revealing his identity. The reaction was immediate. Ji-yeon's eyes widened, and a few customers nearby began whispering as they recognized the global superstar. However, Taehyung's calm, firm posture didn't waver. He ignored the growing whispers, keeping his focus on Ji-yeon. When something like this happens in public, it becomes everyone's concern, he said in a steady voice. So I'll ask you again, why are you treating this customer this way? Minji, who had remained silent until now, turned to Taehyung, her eyes wide with surprise. She couldn't believe he was standing there, standing up for her. For a moment, she felt as though she finally had someone truly on her side. Ji-yeon, attempting to recover her composure, responded defensively, Sir, we're just following the bank's protocols. Taehyung crossed his arms and locked his gaze on hers. Protocols? He asked, leaning in slightly. Or prejudice disguised as bureaucracy? The bank fell into absolute silence. All eyes were on the unfolding scene. Ji-yeon opened her mouth to respond but couldn't find the words. Sungmin, noticing the commotion, hurried over to the counter. He tried to defuse the situation, but the nervousness in his demeanor was evident. Is there a problem here? He asked, feigning ignorance. Taehyung turned his sharp gaze to Sungmin. Yes, there is, he said firmly, pointing toward Minji. This customer came here to open a savings account. She brought all the necessary documents, and yet you're treating her as though she doesn't belong here. Sungmin, trying to maintain control of the situation, replied, Sir, please understand, we're just trying to ensure everything is done correctly. Taehyung cut him off. No, what I understand is that you're creating unnecessary obstacles. Why? With every eye in the bank now on him, Taehyung picked up Minji's documents and began carefully reviewing them. After a moment, he turned back to Sungmin and Ji-yeon and said in a firm voice, These documents are correct. So let me ask you one more time, why aren't you helping this customer? The bank was utterly silent. All eyes were on Taehyung, standing firm in front of Sungmin and Ji-yeon. Minji, still stunned by the unexpected intervention, looked at him with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. She never imagined someone so famous would be there, standing up for her against such injustice. Sungmin cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of the situation. Sir, I understand your concern, but we have clear protocols to ensure the security and efficiency of our services, he said with a forced calmness. This isn't about discrimination. We're simply following the rules. Taehyung held Minji's documents in his hand. He skimmed through them quickly, lifting one of the pages and pointing to the form. Protocols? he asked sharply. Then tell me, what exactly is wrong with these documents? Because from what I see, they're filled out correctly. Everything that's required is here. Jiyeon, now visibly nervous, tried to respond. Well, sometimes the documents might be filled out, but we need to make sure that the person understands what they're signing. Taehyung turned to her slowly, his expression a mixture of disbelief and indignation. Are you suggesting that this customer, who went to all the trouble of following every step and bringing everything that was requested, doesn't understand what she's doing? That's not what I meant, Jiyeon stammered, but her words faltered. We just want to ensure there are no mistakes. Mistakes? Taehyung let out a short, humorless laugh. The only mistake here is how you've treated this woman. You've humiliated her publicly, disregarded her dignity, and now you're trying to justify the unjustifiable. That's unacceptable. The tension in the air was palpable. Other customers in the bank began murmuring, some clearly supporting Taehyung, while others stayed silent, absorbing the scene. Sungmin, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, tried to redirect the focus. Mr. Kim, we're not trying to create a problem. I understand your concern, but this isn't a simple matter. If we could resolve this more discreetly. No, Taehyung interrupted, his voice cutting through the room like a knife. This won't be resolved discreetly. Not when you expose this customer for everyone here to see. The discrimination she faced was public, so the resolution will be public too. Minji looked at Taehyung, feeling courage begin to well up inside her. For the first time, she stood up from her chair and, with a voice still trembling but filled with determination, said, I just want to be treated the same as anyone else. I deserve respect. I worked hard to save this money. I followed all the rules. What more do you want from me? The room fell silent again. Minji's voice echoed with a strength no one had expected. Taehyung turned to her, gave a slight nod of encouragement, and smiled, as if to say, You've got this. Sungmin made one more attempt to regain control. Miss Kim, please understand. We're not trying to be unfair. It's just that, well, there are situations where additional oversight is necessary. Additional oversight? Taehyung shot back. Or just prejudice disguised as bureaucracy. Because so far, all I'm seeing is an institution that prefers to push away customers rather than serve them. Jiyeon glanced at Sungmin, waiting for instructions. Sungmin sighed, clearly uncomfortable with the growing tension. Fine. Maybe we can review the documents again. Not maybe, Taehyung interrupted firmly. You will review the documents now, and you will treat this customer with the respect she deserves. Sungmin took a deep breath, struggling to maintain his composure, but it was evident that he felt cornered. He gestured to Jiyeon, who reluctantly took the papers again and began to review them. Meanwhile, a young woman in line stepped forward and spoke loudly. I've never seen anything like this. She brought everything she needed, and you're still making it harder. Is this really how you treat people here? Another person in line agreed. They do this all the time, always complicating things for the people who need help the most. The situation was quickly turning against the bank. The murmurs grew louder, and Sungmin knew he needed to make a decision before things escalated further. After a few minutes of reviewing the documents, Jiyeon finally admitted, her voice barely audible, there's nothing wrong with the documents. They're correct. Sungmin, now completely out of options, looked at Jiyeon with a stern expression, but knew he couldn't pretend anymore. Turning back to Minji, he forced a smile and said, It seems everything is in order, Miss Kim. We'll open your account now. Before Sungmin could close the matter, Taehyung raised his hand, stopping him mid-sentence. This doesn't end here. I want to know why you made it difficult from the start. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a pattern. And patterns like this need to change. Right now. The tension in the bank was palpable. Sungmin and Jiyeon stood visibly uncomfortable as Taehyung held his ground, his piercing gaze fixed on them. Minji, standing beside him, still clutched her papers, her expression a mix of relief and newfound determination. The murmurs of the customers around them created a rising pressure that neither Sungmin nor Jiyeon could ignore. Taehyung stepped forward, holding Minji's documents as if presenting irrefutable evidence in a courtroom. "So, if the documents are correct," he began, his voice resonating through the room, "why did you spend so much time trying to stop this customer from opening an account? I want a clear explanation, and I won't accept protocols as an answer." Sungmin cleared his throat, struggling to maintain a professional tone, but the unease in his demeanor was undeniable. "Mr. Kim, there's no discrimination here. These are simply guidelines we follow to ensure the bank operates efficiently," he said. Taehyung arched an eyebrow, his voice tinged with sharp sarcasm. "Guidelines?" He turned to Jion. "Then explain to me how these guidelines justify the condescending tone, interruptions, and public humiliation this customer endured. Because frankly, this looks more like institutional prejudice than efficiency." Jion opened her mouth to respond but hesitated. Finally, under the weight of Taehyung's gaze, Minji's quiet strength, and the murmuring crowd, she blurted out, "It's not my fault. This is just how we're told to handle situations like this. Customers with special needs or comprehension issues usually take more time." "Take more time," Taehyung repeated, his voice rising slightly. "And because of that, you'd rather push them away than provide them with the same service as anyone else?" Jion averted her gaze, and Sungmin stepped in to try and regain control. "This isn't an official policy, Mr. Kim. It's just practices that develop over time to..." "To what?" Taehyung cut him off, his indignation clear. "To make your jobs easier? To save a few minutes at the expense of respect and dignity? This practice may not be written down, but it's as real as if it were carved into the walls of this bank." Minji, emboldened by Taehyung's presence, raised her voice towards Sungmin for the first time. "So, I'm not the only person you've treated this way, am I?" The silence that followed was heavy. More murmurs rippled through the crowd. A man in the line raised his hand and said, "They do this with seniors too. My mom had to come back 3 times because she didn't understand the forms." A woman next to him nodded. "My cousin, who's autistic, went through the same thing. They pretend it's a mistake, but you can tell they just don't want to deal with you." Taehyung turned back to Sungmin, his eyes blazing. "Are you hearing this? This isn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern, a systemic problem, and you're responsible for perpetuating it." Sungmin, now visibly cornered, sighed and ran a hand over his forehead. I acknowledge that there may be some practices within our team that discourage customers who require more time. It's not official, but it happens. We're dealing with quotas and deadlines, and sometimes that leads to bad choices." Minji looked at him in disbelief. "So, that's it? You treat people like me as a burden because you want to save time?" Sungmin opened his mouth to respond, but Taehyung stepped in before he could. "This isn't just a problem with this bank. This is a reflection of a society that values efficiency over humanity. But today, here, that stops." Sungmin exhaled deeply and finally admitted, "Fine. Yes, there are unspoken practices that develop, and sometimes they lead to discouraging customers who take more time. It's not right, and it needs to change." Minji's voice, firm and steady, cut through the murmurs. "All I wanted was to open my account. Shouldn't have been this hard. I deserve to be treated like anyone else here." The murmurs of agreement grew louder, and Sungmin visibly struggled to respond. Jion, looking completely shaken, murmured, "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I was just following orders." Taehyung pointed toward her, his tone firm but calm. "Orders you knew were wrong. We all have a choice. Today, you made the wrong one." Taehyung stepped forward, locking eyes with Sungmin and Jion. "This isn't over. I'll make sure this story reaches the people who can enforce real change. Because patterns like this, they don't just fade away. They need to be broken. Starting now." The silence in the bank was broken by timid applause from a few customers, which soon grew louder. Taehyung's words had struck a chord not only with Sungmin and Jion but with everyone present. Minji, who had felt so alone and vulnerable just moments ago, now felt the weight of a collective force standing with her. Sungmin, trying to maintain his composure, raised his hands as if to calm the room. All right. Let's resolve this now, he said, turning to Jiyeon. Please finalize Miss Kim's account immediately. Jiyeon, still flustered, took Minji's documents and began entering them into the system. Meanwhile, Minji looked up at Taehyung, her timid smile and glistening eyes full of gratitude. Thank you for standing by me, she said softly but sincerely. Taehyung smiled back and replied, It wasn't just for you. It was for everyone who has been or will be in your position. You deserve to be treated with respect, Minji. Never doubt that. As Jiyeon worked, Sungmin attempted to regain control of the narrative on behalf of the bank. I'd like to apologize for everything that happened today. This does not reflect our institution's values. I promise we'll take steps to review our practices. Taehyung stared at Sungmin for a moment, as if assessing the authenticity of his words, before responding. Words are a good start, but actions are what really matter. This isn't just about changing procedures. It's about changing mindsets. The people you underestimate are just as capable as anyone else. And in the end, they're the ones who make the biggest difference. Minji listened to those words and felt a wave of confidence wash over her. For the first time that day, she felt truly seen and respected. Jiyeon finally completed the process and handed Minji a receipt. Your account is open, Jiyeon said in a more subdued and even slightly remorseful tone. I'm sorry for the confusion. Minji took the receipt carefully, holding it like a trophy. She smiled, her eyes brimming with tears, but her expression radiated strength. I did it, she said. Though her words were meant for herself, everyone around her heard them. Sungmin turned to Taehyung, still attempting to smooth over the situation. I hope we can move past this. We want to learn from our mistakes. Taehyung shook his head, his expression serious. Learning is important, but it doesn't erase what happened today. Remember, every customer who walks through these doors has a story, a struggle, and a reason for being here. Respect should be the bare minimum. He turned to Minji. And Minji, don't forget this. You are strong and brave. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you truly are. Minji smiled, feeling more empowered than ever. Thank you. I won't forget. At that moment, one of the customers who had taken a photo of Minji earlier stepped forward. I want to apologize. When I took that picture, I thought I was just capturing something sad. But now I see that you're an inspiration. You showed more courage today than most people ever will. Minji thanked him, unsure of how to respond. Taehyung, however, looked at the man and said, If you really believe that, share what you learned today. It's not enough to just watch. We all have a role to play. Minji held the receipt for her newly opened account, feeling stronger than ever. Taehyung turned to address everyone in the room with a brief but powerful statement. Respect shouldn't be something you fight to earn. It should be the foundation of any relationship. No matter who we are or where we come from, we all deserve to be treated with dignity. As Taehyung left the bank, he turned back one last time to smile at Minji and give her a small wave. Minji, now filled with confidence, smiled back, knowing that this day would change her life forever. If you enjoyed this story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience.